Epic of the Living Path, a 6-part spoken word cycle in the Briare's New Humanity voice. An echo hits the room, a soft footstep on a wooden stage, like somebody just walked into your story and hasn't said their name yet. Lights down, breath held. Act 1. Epic of the Living Path. Act 1. The Cast. Listen, before history starts rolling, before the first star blinks awake in the dark, before anybody builds a steeple or sells tickets to enlightenment, there's a writer, not a god throwing lightning, not a cosmic CEO barking orders, but a preeminent sovereign. Think quiet street artist, tagging hope on brick walls nobody photographs, early morning gardener, slipping seeds into cracked sidewalks, a presence that actually looks you in the eyes when you tell the whole ugly story and doesn't flinch. The sovereign speaks, and atoms line up like they understood the assignment. Dust lifts its face, time opens its eyes, rhythms form, spin, orbit, bloom, and somewhere between supernovas and soil, a new thing stands upright and wonders, what am I? Call that new thing humanity, half marvelous work, half walking mess, hands that can build or confine, voices that can bless someone's day or bruise them for years, minds that can map galaxies and still get lost in their own apartment. Humanity is the player on the old path, eyes bright, stomach knotted, born of stardust, stuck in skin that doubts itself. Picture a commuter on a packed subway, one hand on a sticky rail, eyes on a map that keeps changing names. Next stop, more money. Next stop, respect. Next stop, burnout. Rent is climbing. Trust is low. You're one notification away from either opportunity or collapse. That's the old path mood, a tightrope between wonder and war. Picture it again, one lone inventor, fingers stained with ink, grease, and hungry dreams, hunched over a workbench in a dim garage that smells like coffee, metal, and maybe a little regret. He builds an engine, half steel, half prophecy, a heart of bolts and voltage, meant to redefine what far away even means. On paper, it's flawless. In his head, it's salvation. Blueprints sing, bolts gleam. But the first time he fires it up, the machine coughs like it's choking on its own genius, belching smoke into a neighborhood that never asked to be the experiment. What was supposed to sound like progress hits different in a quiet block, already tired of being collateral damage. Neighbors argue, lines get drawn, rumors move faster than the exhaust. Right there, between the engine's promise and the fallout in the street, you've got us in one frame. Humanity as walking paradox, mind bright enough to crack the code on tomorrow, heart fragile enough to weaponize its own inventions, always one spark away from either lighting the way forward or burning the whole block down. That's us, on the edge, teetering between creation and chaos, holding miracle and malfunction in the same trembling hands. And if you've ever looked at religion, politics, family, or your own reflection and thought, if this is the system, I don't trust it. You're not broken, you're awake. The sovereign isn't yelling from a balcony. No megaphone from the clouds. He's already close. This is where another figure steps into the frame. Immanuel, chosen Redeemer, living word in street clothes, one who will later walk our cracked sidewalks, instead of sending a memo from the penthouse. Not a brand ambassador, not the face of an institution that taught you to doubt yourself. And then there's the eternal spark, not a trend, not a self-help app, but that quiet, stubborn testifier in your ribcage. Counselor when your thoughts spiral at 3 a.m. Advocate when shame drags you to court. Ultimate authenticity when you're tempted to be a personal brand instead of a real person. The spark is how the sovereign still speaks, in ways your nervous system can actually handle, especially if God talk has been used against you before. And finally, out of the far side of the story, new humanity, humanity 2.0. Not robots, not source influencers, but people whose inner wiring has been remixed by the eternal spark. They carry presence without performing. They co-create futures that manifest justice and mercy. And they love walking barefoot through your city, not hovering above it, judging your outfit. This is the cast, the sovereign captain, Immanuel, the eternal spark, humanity, and new humanity. Remember it like this: sovereign speaks, Immanuel walks, spark ignites, humanity questions, new humanity co-creates, speaker, walker, igniter, questioner, co-creator. The arc from humanity as we are, confused, brilliant, dangerous, to new humanity as we could be, steady, luminous, dangerous only to despair, guided by the tri-unity, the original community at the center of everything, speaker, walker, spark, who refuse to let the story end as a tragedy. Lights down, breath held. Act 2. Epic of the Living Path. Act 2. The Old Path, born of stardust. In the inception, the sovereign sings, light answers, oceans listen, mountains line up like they're backstage in a choir. Earth is a fresh canvas. Every color screams good. Humanity wakes up in a garden where shame doesn't even have a name yet, where work feels like worship and rest is never illegal. But choice is written into the code, because love without freedom is just a well-decorated cage. So the old path opens beneath our feet. First, the fall. Not just a bite of some forbidden fruit, but a whisper in the dark. Maybe the sovereign is holding out on you. Maybe you'd do better as your own god. We grab the mic. We remix reality. We trade wonder for my way. Blood hits the soil. Brother against brother. Jealousy becoming a language. We still speak fluently. The ground remembers. Impurity in the world isn't mud on your sneakers. It's systems clenched in fear. It's policing that shows up like a threat, not a neighbor. It's housing rules and price hikes that shove families to the edge of the city and call it the market. It's timelines wired to amplify outrage over honesty. Algorithms that feed on your anxiety like it's free content. These systems are our collective panic, wearing a uniform, acting out of control instead of care, fear instead of hope. But even there, little riots of kindness break out, neighbors hosting block meetings instead of just filming each other, tenant groups that refuse, another quiet eviction, group chats that become support lines instead of gossip feeds, digital corners where people post help, not just hot takes, tiny seedlings of change pushing through concrete. Still, violence becomes a language. Power becomes a drug. The early headlines read, "Humanity innovates new ways to break itself. The sovereign captain grieves. Architect watching his design rip its own wires out of the wall." Then comes Noah and the flood. Not a children's mural with smiling giraffes, but a desperate reset, a world drowning in its own tears. Judgment and mercy walk side by side, holding the same rainbow between them, a promise arched over a planet that forgot how to keep promises. Generations roll. We stack foundations, doctrine codes, sacred tables, treaties, empires. We pass down guidance for tomorrow, etched in stone, announced in tints, tattooed in memory. Sometimes we listen, mostly we nod, then do what we were going to do anyway. There are peacemakers who step into crossfire with empty hands, refusing to pass the hate forward. Leadership chronicles of prime rulers and first ladies who start humble and end paranoid, building monuments of themselves out of other people's pain. Tales of wisdom traded at the city gate. Grandmother's sayings that taste like citrus and smoke. Pride will sell you the illusion of control and hand you a cage. Songs of celebration. Drums and dancing when battles are survived. Harps screaming gratitude when deliverance hits like surprise rain. Voices of lament spilled on street corners and palace steps. How long, sovereign? Are you watching or what? Some days the sovereign is called my judge, my redemption, my captain, all in the same breath, because we're not sure whether to say thank you or where were you? And both are real. The pattern becomes impossible to ignore. We build something good, corrupt it, beg for help, repeat. Empires rise like glittering mirages on the horizon, then collapse into dust and unpaid wages. Religious language gets hijacked. Prime rulers slap the sovereign's name on their wars. Hustlers sell forgiveness at markup. Sanctuaries turn into stages, altars into photo ops. Business as usual humanity looks. Epic of the Living Path. Act 3. The Hinge. Promise, Downfall, and Allegory. History starts talking in allegories. Because we've learned to dodge direct speech, the sovereign captain takes our ruins and turns them into parables, stories that wear masks, so your defenses don't see them coming. A people dragged into exile becomes a metaphor for every inner self that wakes up one day and realizes, I'm far from home, and I walked myself here. Deliverance stories unfold, seas splitting, chains snapping, enslaved people walking into open sky, staring at their own feet like they've never seen them free before. On street level, it's that moment you actually leave. The toxic relationship, the predatory job, the religious club that taught you to mistrust your own soul, the organized religion that loved its own image more than your own inner life. Those ancient jailbreaks were always more than geography. Trailers for an inner escape. The sovereign sends rising tides, visions, dreams, wise ones who refuse hush money, voices that say, you're not crazy. This pain is real, but it's not the final word. Then come the signs, the promise, a sentence that outlives nations, whispering, someone is coming who will carry this weight with you and break the cycle, not just manage the symptoms. The dove, not just a peaceful bird, but a reminder that storms end, that dry land still exists, even when all you see is water. The wrestler, a night in the dirt, where a human grapples with the transcendent, refusing to let go, limping away renamed. You don't walk the same after that. You don't pray the same. You stop confusing honesty with disrespect. Treasured, the wild idea that the sovereign still calls humanity mine, even after we've pawned ourselves to the highest bidder. Alongside all this hope, downfall. Prime rulers ignoring warnings, nations doubling down on cruelty, sacred spaces turned into marketplaces, wise messengers jailed for treason because they told the truth too clearly. The message of this act is not forget the past. It's all grace now. The message is the old path might be prologue, but the scars are real ink. We don't wipe the slate. We read it. The sovereign takes every failed nation, every shattered city, every exile song, and refiles them, not as proof we're hopeless, but as sacred, cautionary tales and soil for new seeds. We stop glamorizing the good old days. We admit that sometimes, back then, was just the same brokenness with worse plumbing. We start to wonder, what if all of this, every promise, every collapse, every jailbreak, is setting up a different arrival, not a prime ruler in a war truck, but a healer on a borrowed donkey, not another empire, with better branding, but a different operating system entirely. The hinge creaks, dust curls in the light, the door starts to open. You can feel the shift, like pressure dropping before rain, like a city holding its breath between sirens and sunrise, somewhere between ancient wisdom and wet pavement. A new path is about to step into view, wearing our dust on its shoes. Lights down, breath held. Act 4. Epic of the Living Path. Act 4. The New Path. Born of the Eternal Spark. Then, in a back alley of history, far from any capital city, promises kept, takes on skin. Immanuel shows up, not with a PR team, but with calloused hands, and a face you'd scroll past, unless the spark in you flared in recognition. He doesn't shout from the clouds. He rents a room in the neighborhood, lets the noise keep him up at night, learns our slang, shows up where the tension is. He sits at tables that religious experts call bad optics. They see only risk. Immanuel sees hidden royalty, esteemed ones in hiding. He walks into systems like he's not intimidated by credentials. Stories start as parables and end as secrets unveiled. He says lines like, "You've heard it said before, but I'm telling you now." And somewhere in your chest, you realize the sovereign was never absent, just misquoted. He flips tables in a fortress, not because he resists organized religion as a concept, but because he loves real adoration so much to let it be turned into merchandise. He drags power structures and spiritual games into the light, like old furniture crawling with roaches. Masks slip, motives show. The sparkle on the Empire's costume turns out to be other people's tears. The sick come close, and instead of lectures, they get hope. Embodied, healed bodies. Guilt discharged. Crowds singing lyrics that were never on the program. Hope stops being a concept and becomes someone touching your shoulder, saying, "Get up. I'm not done with you." Then the story swerves. This Immanuel, who could have built an empire that actually worked, walks straight into a trial, rigged from day one. He shoulders an execution stake, crafted by the same system he exposed. He absorbs the worst we can throw. No shortcuts, no clapbacks, no PR spin. He goes all the way down, into the grave, into the silence, into the place where every failed human story usually ends. And then he doesn't stay there. The stone moves. Breath returns. The ultimate no of death gets overruled by a louder yes. The comeback isn't a magic trick. It's a jailbreak. From here, power to the people stops being a campaign slogan and becomes a distribution plan. No more gatekeeping by priestly elites. No more monopoly on the sacred. The same eternal spark that hovered over waters, that whispered through wise ones in whispers, starts moving with regular people, baristas and bus drivers, nurses and night shift janitors, artists and ex-cons, kids with anxiety, elders with regrets. The first big preview, a festival of fire on foreheads, languages unlocked, presents poured out on all kinds, not just the verified accounts. Buildings become optional. Community does not. Taking action becomes the liturgy. Sharing food, canceling debts, standing between the vulnerable and the teeth of the machine, welcoming all. Lights down, breath held. Act 5. Epic of the Living Path. Act 5. Inner rewiring. New humanity from the inside out. Here's the tension. You can't build a new humanity on old path wiring. You can speak in the tongues of source messengers and still cuss out your neighbor in traffic. You can shout freedom on a stage and still micromanage everybody in your group chat. So, the eternal spark goes to work in the quiet places. Wisdom for the wise isn't hoarding information. It's learning to see clearly without losing compassion. The spark teaches you to read your own motives like a book. The book you finally bought yourself Northern lights flicker in your mental sky. Flashes where you suddenly get why you lash out. Why certain names make your throat close instead of judging you from above. The spark sits with you there, flashlight in hand, saying, "Let's look. I'm not leaving." Inner contentment creeps in, not forced gratitude, but a deep exhale when it hits you that you are not equal to your output, your follower count, your worst moment. The hustle's voice gets a little quieter. The voice of real rest gets louder. Transformation calls aren't one-time sacred moments. They're daily pings in parking lots and text threads. Those nudges. You could clap back right now, or you could actually listen. You could hide, or you could tell the truth. You answer imperfectly, but you answer. Steadfast hearts aren't born. They're built every time you choose honesty over image, bridge building over backlash. Your inner determination gains muscle memory. You start aligning with what the sovereign's been saying all along. You are chosen and highly esteemed, not by merit, but by mercy. Esteemed doesn't mean you're excused from growth. It means growth is not a condition for love. The spark keeps pressing. Strength within begins to surface, not bravado, but the courage to say, "I was wrong," without dissolving into shame. Integrity becomes your unshakable center. No more backstage self and stage self, living parallel lives. You learn to hold influence without copying empire, to lead without needing to be a savior, to co-create without harvesting people as consumables. Spiritual bypassing loses its shine. Love and light talk, that dodges accountability, starts to taste like stale sugar. Charisma without character stops looking like a gift and starts looking like a ticking bomb. So the spark keeps renovating, rewiring your reactions, repainting your narratives, replacing the old path soundtrack of prove, perform, perfect with a new baseline of receive, respond, repair. This is slow work, unglamorous work, sacred work, because without this inner rebuild, we just recreate the same old religious empires with cooler graphics and better playlists. The new path refuses that. New humanity is not people who checked yes on a belief form. New humanity is people whose insides are being rearranged to match the inner determination of the tri-unity. Speaker, walker, spark, day by day, fight by fight, choice by choice. If you've ever sat on the floor of your life, surrounded by broken habits and burned bridges, feeling conviction and comfort in the same breath, you've already tasted Act 5. The deepest, marvelous works happen where nobody's filming. Lights down, breath held. Act 6. Epic of the Living Path. Act 6. Communal and Cosmic Horizon. Brilliant Horizons. Zoom out. New humanity was never meant to be a solo project. As the spark rewires individuals, renewal pathways start appearing between them, in direct messages and at dinner tables, co-ops and group chats, threads of inner alignment stretching across neighborhoods, beyond time zones and timelines. Unified community doesn't mean clones. It looks like a mosaic. Different cultures, different languages, different wounds, held together by a common center, not a common enemy. Chosen community. They reframe chosen, not better than, but responsible for. If you've been healed, you're on the healing crew now. If you've been forgiven, you become a safer place for other people's confessions. New humanity forms cells of resistance against despair. Pop-up kitchens feeding the unhoused. Studios where art is made without exploitation. Living rooms where racism ain't just called out, but unlearned. Group texts where the first response to a crisis is, "I'm on my way," not "told you so." Fresh perspectives, new ways to imagine money, not as a god, not as a ghost, but as a tool in the hands of the just. New ways to think about power, not a ladder to climb, but a table to widen. New ways to design cities where beauty isn't gated behind wealth and parks feel as sacred as stained glass. Brilliant horizons stretch out. Music that heals instead of numbing. Media that tells the truth and still leaves room for hope. Tech that connects without hooking you like a slot machine. Schools that teach kids how to feel as well as how to think. All of this is still in beta, half-built, glitching forward. We're improvising, messing up, doubling back, apologizing, trying again. But the arc is different now. Empire, violence, spiritual abuse. They've been named, dragged into the light, stripped of their costumes. Agency and presence have been distributed into ordinary lives. Inner integrity is on the table as non-negotiable infrastructure. Communities are learning not just what they're against, but what they're building for. And then the script hints at ultimate disclosure. The veil lifts, not with Hollywood explosions, but like a dawn that refuses to stay. On the horizon, every mask comes off. Every illusion gets audited. Every system has to answer. Did you serve love or did you serve yourself? The sovereign's intent for creation stands center stage, unapologetic, a cosmos humming with justice, mercy, and beauty, no longer clinched by fear. New humanity is there too, not as passive audience, but as co-creators who learned in the dark how to hold light without burning each other. Cities, cultures, tech, all of it can be a destructive weapon or an empowering instrument in the hands of new humanity. It starts to sound like adoration, uploads as offerings, policies as interventions, architecture as living parable. This is the trajectory from humanity on the old path. Brilliant, but broken, looping violence and denial, to new humanity on the living path, honest, rewired, working out redemption in public with trembling and joy, from empire as default to service as instinct, from religion as performance to presence as oxygen, from get me out of this world to help me rebuild it, block by block, heart by heart. And you, sitting in your room with your doubts, guard half up, maybe burned by religion, maybe tired of spiritual sales pitches. If there is anything in you that still refuses to stay fully cynical, if a small, stubborn warmth flares at the thought of a world less ruled by fear, then let this be more than poetry. This is your line in the script. If you are still here, you are probably one of us. If you want to keep walking this path, stay close. We're building this in public, story by story, spark by spark. Briaris.
Found a map drawn in starlight, traced the edges of the unknown. My heart beats to the compass's whisper, it calls me where the seeds are sown. A latitude of hope, longitude of dreams. Cross the chasms in between. Guide me, compass to eternity, through the night and galaxies. Every heartbeat charts the way, till we find our dawn of day. The sea of stars becomes my ocean, I ride the waves of what could be, anchored not by fear or reason, but by the truth I came to see.
Briaris.
Epic of the Living Path, a 6-part spoken word cycle in the Briares New Humanity voice.